Welcome to Week 8 of Introduction to Algebra with Mrs. Weibark. This week we will be discussing ratios and proportions. In your dictionary, please take down these three important terms. In the section for R, include ratio, which is a comparison of two numbers by division. In the section for U, include unit rate. This is a ratio with a denominator of 1 unit. And in the P section, include proportion. A proportion is an equation that states two ratios are. This week, we are going to learn 4 important new skills. Take notes on each of these slides in your dictionary in the reference section for week 6. Towards the end of the video, I will show you an example of my notes in case you need to catch up or fill in any missing information. The first skill we need to learn is to be able to write a ratio in simplest form. So in this first example, if I have a variety of candy and I have 10 chocolates to every 6 candies, then I can write my ratio as 10:6, which is pronounced 10 to 6, or 10 over 6. It's the fraction 10/6. In order to write this ratio in simplest form, I would divide the 10 and the 6 by 2 and have a ratio of 5 to 3, or 5/3. In the next example, this is a common example used in math, we might say that I would have a bag of marbles that included 18 red marbles, 9 violet marbles, and 14 yellow marbles. If I am interested in the ratio of red to violet, the ratio can be written as 18 to 9. But if I would like the simplest ratio, I would divide 18 and 9 each by 9 to get a ratio of 2 to 1. This could also be written as the fraction 2 over 1. If I'm interested in the number of red to yellow marbles, this would be written as 18 to 14, or in simplest form, 9 to 7. Our second skill is to be able to determine whether or not ratios are equivalent. In order to do this, you set the ratios equal and you use cross products to check if they are equivalent. Students often refer to cross products as cross multiplying. In example 3, I'm asked the question, are 6/8 and 12/16 equivalent? I would write an equation setting 6/8 equal to 12/16. I would then ask myself the question, is 6 times 16 equal to 8 times 12? 96 equals 96, which is true. So yes, these two ratios are equivalent. In our next example, I am asked whether 7/14 and 9/16 are equivalent. I would again set up an equation in which I have 7 over 14 equal to 9 over 16. I would use cross products to get 7 times 16 and ask whether that is equal to 14 times 9. 14 times 9, 7 times 16. Are these two equal? In this case, they are not. 112 does not equal 126. It is false. Therefore, these two ratios are not equivalent. Our next skill is about being able to use unit rates. In a unit rate, the denominator must equal 1 in order for it to be considered a unit rate. So for example, in number 5, if I drove 180 miles in 3 hours and asked what was my rate of speed, I could write a ratio of 180 to 3. But that's not so helpful for answering the question, what was my speed? Therefore, I would divide the numerator and the denominator by the denominator of 3. This would give me a unit rate of 60 to 1 miles per hour. And this would be a speed of 60 miles per 1 hour. You might ask, why do we use unit rates? Frankly, unit rates allow us to make comparisons, and we use these all the time, every day. In example 6, Taylor was paid $15 to babysit for 3 hours. Ariel was paid $20 to babysit for 5 hours. I would like to know who was paid better. By writing simply a ratio, I can see that Taylor was paid at the ratio of $15 to 3 hours, and Ariel was paid at a ratio of 20 to 5. For each ratio, I would divide the numerator and denominator by the denominator. So Taylor's ratio gets divided top and bottom by 3. Ariel's ratio gets divided top and bottom by 5. That allows me to see that the unit rate in dollars per hour tells me that Taylor was actually paid $5 per 1 hour, while Ariel was paid $4 per 1 hour. So in this example, Taylor was paid more per hour. In our last topic today, we are going to talk about proportions. In this arithmetic example, if 6 divided by 10 equals 3 divided by 5, or we could say 6/10 equals 3/5, then 6 times 5 must equal 10 times 3. This is easy to see when we are using numbers. However, algebraically, we like to generalize. So we use the algebraic rule that if A over B is equal to C over D, then A times D must equal B times C. And it's important to note that B cannot equal 0 and D cannot equal 0, because at no time can we divide by 0. In our last example today, the exchange rate for Mexican pesos to US dollars is 10.737. So if you were vacationing in Mexico and at the end of your vacation you had 250 pesos left, how many dollars in US dollars would you receive if you exchanged your pesos back? In order to answer this question, we are first going to set up a proportion. Our proportion is set up as pesos to dollars. So we have 10.737 pesos to $1. That's why we have 1 in the denominator. This would equal 250 pesos to D, letting D represent the dollars we would receive back. That's our unknown in this example. Next, we would use cross products to see that 10.737 times D has to equal 1 times 250. We would simplify and then divide both sides by 10.737 in order to solve for D. This would allow us to see that D is equal to 23.28 in US dollars. Therefore, if we exchanged our 250 pesos, we would receive 23.28 US dollars. For week 6, you should have notes on the 4 topics that we've discussed. The first was writing a ratio in simplest form. If you need a moment to catch up on these notes, please pause the video and write down these examples. The second skill was determining if ratios are equivalent. This is where we looked at example 3. We also discussed example 4, and then we moved on to unit rates. In unit rates, you should have that the denominator must equal 1 to be a unit rate. This is the second part on unit rates, in which we did example 6. And lastly, we discussed proportions, in which we have an arithmetic example and an algebraic rule, followed by example 7. In addition, in your dictionary, you should have added 3 terms. You should have included proportion in the P section, ratio in the R section, and unit rate in the U section. Thank you for watching this Weibark production.